Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel, eLearn techSkills. My name is Emmanuel and my job is to help you simplify programming so that you can start building your dream project as soon as possible. It's been a while we've been working with Python series where, I took you through Python basics, syntax and all of those things. And I thought to switch it up a little bit. You can start using Python to build application, and we are looking at Python for web in this series, and of course we're going to be using Django. And to give you context, Django is a web framework by Python, and Django is a really, a big framework that helps you build a full stack application. It also, has templates that allows you to actually, use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and all of those things. And you can also use Django Rest Framework, DRF, for API, for building RESTful API. So let's say you are working in a company where there are front-end developers and you are a back-end developer. You can actually build API that they will be able to integrate to the front-end interface. So without further ado, let's get started and start building something with Django. Most likely for this first project, we're going to build the REST API with Django Rest Framework. And of course, I'm going to be breaking down in my subsequent tutorial where I'm going to be explaining Django as a full stack framework and also how you can use it for API to build API of any skill. All right, so without further ado, let's get into the video. All right, so to get started with Django, the best and the easiest way to learn Django and Django REST framework is to use their official documentation, and it's right here. If you look at this is Django, and the name of the website is djangoproject.com. Of course, you can search Google as well. You can say Django docs. So, and of course, you see that it leads you to the same place. docs.djangoproject.com. All right, so this is the documentation, right? And you also need to know that the current version is 4.2, is the one written up here. If you actually go to the actual website without the doc, okay, I think I messed that up. Let me take out this. So if you get to this, you will see that they actually have the version up here. So, and then they are telling you how to, you can even get started easily using this GitHub repo. But for this project, I'm going to actually teach you how to set it up yourself, just so you can start writing your web application with Django already. All right, so without further ado, let's continue. All right, so if you take a look at this is just my Visual Studio code, and I haven't even written a single line of code. All right, so I already opened my terminal, just as you can see. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new folder. Let me call it DRF starter, just like that. So I'm going to use my terminal to cd into it. So cd DRF start. All right, so I'm in that particular folder now. That makes perfect sense. All right, so that way it doesn't conflict with our previous code that we already wrote in this place. So I don't want that to happen. That's why I'm trying to create a separate folder for this project. All right, so to get started with Django, of course, you need to download a couple of things, right? So I already, pretty much downloaded everything. You can say something like pip install Django. Right? But this is not the best way, this is not the best approach to it. So the first thing you want to do is to download virtual environment. So you could use pip install virtual env, just like this. Yeah, so but I already installed it, so you can see it says requirement already satisfied. So pretty much I've installed it already, and The way to now initiate it, you will need to say Python m virtual env vm. So now what I just did here is the snippet of code you need to write. To initiate it, then you need to give it a name, VENV. You can call it whatever you like. I just prefer to call it this particular name, VENV. All right, so you can see that folder is already created into my DRF starter right here. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to activate it. So I'm going to say VENV slash. So and you need to take note of the kind of slash that your terminal is using. So if you are on Linux machine, it might be a forward slash, not backward like this. On Windows, I'm on a Windows PC. So that's why I'm using this particular kind of slash. All right, so to continue with this, you need to say VEM, which is the name that I use for my virtual environment. And then I'm going to say script with S, scripts. Then I'm going to say activate, something like this. So now if you take a look at the back of my path, originally I just had PS and then the name of my computer and all of those things. But in this case now, at the back of the PS, you can notice VENV. That's the name of your virtual environment. Now, what are we using virtual environment for? So virtual environment is more like you're containerizing your app. What it means is that, let's say you have like 4, 5 applications that you are building on the same system. Now, the different modules you are going to be using in the different apps might differ. So, for example, you are going to install Django, you are going to install Django Rest Framework, you are going to install things like corsheaders and so many other modules. Now, some modules are general, some are specific to the particular project you're trying to build. All right. So if you don't want this to cascade into other applications, it's better to have it in your virtual environment, meaning that only this particular project will have those modules. It's not global to the entire, so it's not global to your system. That's the whole point of it. All right. So now I already activate my virtual environment. The next thing to do is to install Django. So you can just say pip install Django. All right. And I want to also install Django Rest Framework because that's the end product of this particular tutorial. So I'm going to nest it. You can install it individually, but in my preference, I think I like to install them together. So I'm going to put a space and say Django Rest Framework together like that. All right, so it's going to do its magic. I'm going to pause the video and fast forward it. When it's finished, we'll continue. All right, fantastic. The whole thing is finished. So the next thing I want to kind of install here is Django Core Header. We don't need it yet, but because we're going to need it later, it's just for your front-end developer to be able to, make requests to your API eventually, and they are going to be able to make calls, and it's going to work. Like for your API to be open to allow them to have access to the resource you have created in your API. That's what this is for. So you don't need it now, really. But then I kind of want to install most of the dependency down before we start. So to install that, there's pypy.org where they actually have the documentation called header. I think I should just show you. All right, so this is the documentation for that. So all you just need to do is just copy this particular that says pip install Django cause header. So with that, of course, that's not all you need to do though, but at least I'll show you how to do the rest of it. So pip install Django cause header. I'm going to install that as well. All right, fantastic. That is done. So now I can now start creating Django project. All right, so now the way Django works is that first of all, you need to create a project. Then you can have many apps. Now, the way it kind of work, the way I kind of understood it is that Django is trying to help us to kind of have like a big container as a project. All right. So now let's say you now have, let's say for authentication, like user onboarding, you know, you can use a separate app to run that. So let's say now you want to be selling products, you can have a product app. Let's say later you want to, be doing some sort of advertisement, you can have a separate app for that. So, and each of these app can be relating with one another. So as we go on, you'll understand what I mean exactly. All right, so the next code you want to write is to say Django admin start project. Then I'm going to give the project a name. So let's say Django, Django, uh, let's say project. I don't think Django allow capital letter in between words. So let's just try Django project. So if it doesn't allow, it's going to say so. So, but if it does, no issues. So you can see here, it actually does. So you can see Django project. That's the name of our project. And in the project, there are a couple of things you will notice that of course, Django is kind of weird in the fact that once you run that snippet of code, it's going to create a folder and going to create another folder inside the same folder with the exact same name, and it's going to have all of those files. Now, I don't want that to happen, so I'm going to delete it, and I'm going to rewrite the code to make sure that it actually, just create one folder. All right. So, of course, to bring back the previous code that you wrote in your terminal, you can just put arrow up button, and that's going to bring it up. So I have Django admin start project, Django project. Now I want to put a period at the back like this so that it's going to put all of those content inside this particular folder. That's exactly why I'm using the period. So if I press enter now, it's going to do the same thing, but this time around, is going to put all the snippet of code inside the same folder, which is what I want. All right. So and here I have access to manage.py. So manage.py file, basically what it does is like helper, helper file that allow us to do some administrative task, like create project, create app, and so many other simple tasks like that. So for the most part, we're going to be doing Python manage.py, Python manage.py a lot in the project. So that is what this file is for. It's just for administrative, it's just like using Laravel Artisan. All right, there's a file called Artisan in Laravel as well. So if you're familiar with that framework. All right, so one of those things I want to explain is that if you are already familiar with building web applications with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, using a framework is like a robust way to actually, get something going pretty fast. So the next thing I want to do is actually to run the app, to run the project and see what happens. So I'm going to say Python manage. I don't need to cd into anything anymore. Let me just try to say ls just to see what we have here. Oh, so I'm outside the folder of the project. If I run manage.py here, yeah, it's going to actually work because I don't need to cd into the folder. All right. So now I can say Python manage.py run server just like this. It's going to start the development server, and of course it's running at port 8000. So here is what we have going on. You can see this is just a setup for a simple Python project. All right, so basically I think I like to keep this here and then take this back to where it was before. So yeah, so basically this is just a simple out of the box Django setup. All right, so the next thing I want to do here is I don't want to close the server running. But one cool thing you can also do is, let's say you're already running some projects, you can actually specify the port that you want your server to run on. For example, I can say Python, sorry, I can say Python manage.py run server. Then I can specify what port I want this to run on. Let's say 4000. So of course it always has to be in thousands. So when you press enter like that, it's going to run on for port 4000. However, if I go to the previous one that I was running before and refresh, it's no longer going to run because still running. Weird. So really, it's not supposed to run anyway. Yeah. So, but basically, since I'm running on a different port now, so it's no longer supposed to run. So I can now go to port this particular port now. So you can see I'm running on port 4000 now. And weirdly, port 8000 is still running. Weird stuff. All right, but no problem. So port 4000 is what we are running on. And that's basically the idea. All right. So while this is running, I can open a new terminal just to be running my administrative, task. So the first thing I want to create is, let's just say we want to create a blog application. So I'm going to say python manage.py start app. Then I'm going to give it a name. So let's call it blog. So if I press enter now, oh, okay, so I'm not actually in the right directory. So ls, I need to see where I am currently. So you can see I'm outside the DRF startup project. So I need to cd into DRF starter, just like that. So in the DRF starter, if I do ls, I can see manage.py. That's why we are not getting what we are looking for. So if I put my cursor up there and do the same thing, we should have, okay, what does this say? Import, couldn't import Django. Are you sure? That's weird. ls. Oh, okay, because I didn't activate my virtual environment. This is weird. All right, so VM scripts activate, because we installed the Django and Django Rest Framework in the virtual environment. If you didn't activate it, your code is not going to be working. All right, so now if you do the same thing now, it's going to work. Yeah, and you can look at it here. You can see that we have a couple of files already, which is init, and init doesn't have anything. Admin has a couple, apps and model has nothing, test and views. So basically, Django is just kind of giving us some sort of empty shell for us to build upon. What are some things is the actual project, which is in here. So it has a couple of things here. You can look at it. This is the settings.py. And in this settings.py, we're going to do a lot of configuration, a lot of setting up and all of that. All right. So that being said, we've been able to create app. We've been able to create a project. All right. So what is the next thing to do? The next thing we're going to do here is to actually tell Python, to tell Django that we've actually created a new project and the name is blog. So to do that, we're going to go into the inside our settings.py, we're going to go into the installed apps. In the installed apps, you are going to add that blog, in the list here. So you're going to put a comma. That's one of those things. The next thing you want to do also is, I also installed a Django Rest Framework alongside Django. So I'm going to also specify that rest underscore framework. And if anything breaks, you need to see it in your server. You can see, the server is actually it's telling us that, okay, currently this is what is happening. Now, another important thing you need to also note is, okay, before even saying that, the core header that we installed also alongside all our installation, we need to also put that in our installed app. And the reason for that is not all modules that you install that you have to put like this, but this is also one of the required thing for the installation of this particular module. If you take a look at the documentation, you can see I'm not just making it up. You can see after you install this with, of course, Python m blah 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 this installation, you need to put this in the installed app, and then you also need to add core header in the middleware. All right, so I'm going to copy that, minimize this, and go to the middleware. The middleware is right here. You can put it anywhere, but at least I think I like to always put it before and put a comma here. Of course, you need to wrap around with quotation, otherwise it's going to break your app. So of course you can see it even terminated my server because I didn't close it initially. So we can run it back now, and then the server is back on. Now the server is also complaining that we have 8 unapplied migrations. So, and I'm going to talk about that shortly. I'm just trying to set up some major configurations that are common to Django. So we've been able to put up the new app, and then core headers, and then of course all of this simple setup and all that. All right. So what else do we need to do? Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is databases. Now Django by default ships with SQLite 3. All right. So and with that, you don't need to do anything. You can just be running your migrations, and you will be able to actually send things to your database out of the box. But Django supports uh, PostgreSQL. Django also supports MySQL and so many other databases. It even supports MongoDB and all of that. Of course, in the documentation, it doesn't out of the box support it, but then there's a trick around it. You can actually make it work. All right, so for the purpose of this tutorial, I don't want to do a lot of stressing. So I don't want to concentrate on, creating or setting up a new database since it already has SQLite 3. In my subsequent tutorial, I'm going to dedicate a video on how to actually, configure, different databases for Django. All right. So if you take a look at this, the next thing you might want to do is to run migration. All right. So now, if you create a new model, and I think I need to explain a couple of things just before I go into model and how this is. So Django, just like every other full stack framework, is based on MVC, MVT architecture. So of course, MVC is model view controller, but the way Django kind of refactored theirs is such that they have model just like every other framework. They have views, but they have templates. All right. So their views is more like what you call your controller. All right. So because for example, if you are looking at Laravel, where all the app logic goes is in your controller. So in Django, where all your logic goes, all your app logic, where they go is your views. And where you get to display the HTML and all of that is in the template. All right, so that's why Django is called model view template kind of architecture. And of course, they are actually following the MVC architecture, just like you will see in other big frameworks, like ASP.NET MVC and the likes. All right, so that being said, so you will need to, by default, Django already preload some user authentications and login, logout setup just out of the box, just for you to have something going immediately you set up your project. All right. So for us to make that work, for us to be able to log in, sign up a new user and all of those things, you need to run migration. Now, the migration will actually create the table in the database, right? So to get that done, I'm going to say Python manage.py migrate because the migration is already set up for us. Okay, so this is the migration folder. This is the migration folder for this particular application. So if I press enter now, you can see there's so much that it just applied. So this is the one that's actually creating those instances in the actual database. So more or less like it's creating the tables and all of that. So now that the tables are created, the next thing we want to do is to create a new user. And The way to do that is in the terminal, at least just for a start, just for you to be able to log in. So I'm going to say python manage.py create super user. Is it create? Yeah, create super user. So here now is asking for a username. Let me just call that admin. It's asking for email. I'm going to say admin at gmail.com. You can call it what you like. I'm just using a short word. And password, I'm going to say admin. Password again, I'm going to say admin. And yeah, it's asking that this password is weak. I don't care. Why? Yes. So, and that is created successfully. So now our server is still running. So let's test what we've just done. So here now we have our, you know, application running here. So I can say slash admin because admin is already created out of the box by Django. It's just a login. So remember the login we had, admin, and put the password, admin, weird stuff. All right, so now it works. So you can see that we have a dashboard and users. You can see the user that is already created. We have admin at gmail.com and all of those things. First name, last name are not created yet. So we can actually edit this particular user if you want to and add more, you know, things to it. We can also add a new user. So let's say I'm adding a new user. Let's say username. But at this level, you will actually need to put more than just uh, you won't like the rules for password. You need to make sure that it's complete, otherwise it won't allow you to save. All right, so let's say I'm using my actual name. Let's say Emmanuel is the username and password. Let's say Emmanuel 1234. Hopefully I remember that. So Emmanuel 1234. All right. And if I click enter now, you can see it's already telling us, man, the password is too similar to the username. Because, yeah, so you can see all of these rules are working and they won't allow you to save if you don't actually, have the correct thing. So let me put a new password. All right. So this is different from the username. So I'm putting a more correct password. Now here is also giving us ability to add other components like first name. And of course, you can see how quick and beautiful this is. The onboarding is already set up for you out of the box, which is pretty much, interesting. So, and I can put email address. I can give permission, maybe is active, is a staff, super user, all of those things. If I want him to be all of this, uh, I can make it that way, and I may this. And if I want it to belong to a group, I can make it belong to a group. You know, let's say admin. If there are group like admin or maybe super user or any groups that I've created, and of course the group is here. There's no group yet. So if I decided to create some group, I can actually add the user there and all of that. So aside that, user permission can add log entry, can change log entry, all of this kind of permission you can select for the user. You know, you will need to press down control to be able to select multiple, and you can say choose all. So choose all means that you will be able to do everything more like a super user. So last login, you can say today, and then time is now. You can see all this cool functionality out of the box. The time, the date, everything is out of the box. It's giving you. All right, so when I save that, you can see I now have a new user. And if I check the users, you can see I have admin. I also have, this other kind of user. If I click on this guy, I can also put the first name, last name, and other, privileges. So that's just that about the admin the admin panel, and you can see all of this. I can also log out. I can change my password. I can visit the site, the front end part of the site, right? And I can go back to my, admin dashboard. You can see home, authentication, user, log users. So authentication, home, all right. So you can see the navigation bar is working, everything is working out of the box. Now, let's move on into actual building of something custom from us. All right, so let's see, what can we make? So let's assume now that, of course, this is blog uh, this is blog. So in the model, this is the first part of Django that you need to actually write some code yourself. So now what does a model do? A model is just like, the way you want your table to be. So model will contain all the fields like the class and the field that you want your table to have. So the class name is going to be the name of the table that you have in your database. And the different field that you put there are going to be the different column or rows in your tables, right? So let's say we want to create a blog application. So we can say class, uh, let's say blog. And of course, by convention, you remember that class has to have capital letter at the beginning. So I can say now model. Right. So you can see like inheritance is really is a big deal here. So in Django itself, and you can also check out what they wrote, what code they wrote for model. So you can see model, meta class, all of this code. And you can see it's a really long file, that already contain a lot of functionality out of the box for you, right? So basically, you want to just focus on learning how to write the code the way it can work. All right. So in this model class, there is model method. So the model method is the one that give us a lot of, ability to actually do a lot. So if you check it out here, you can see, uh, so like the model method is right somewhere here. So basically what it's doing is allowing you to actually have custom field type. For example, there are some field that you want to have as text. All right, so that is possible in Django and with this models method. All right, so to get started, now you know that database table has ID and it's auto-generated. That you don't need to create yourself. So you can leave that field empty. The next field is maybe, let's say, title for your blog. So you can say title is just a variable equals to models dot, then you can now have the specific field that you want to have. Let's say, all right, I meant to say char field, just like this. And one of the parameters it requires, which is a required parameter, is max length. So you can see max length here. So you can specify how long this field will be. So let's say 200, just for example. And then we can say, let's say description. And then we're going to set that also to models dot, let's say, that shouldn't be char field. That should be text field. Why? Because this is going to be a lot of text. That doesn't require a minimum text. So now inside here, you can also create a function or a method inside the class that will be able to kind of show a particular field that, because if you look at it here, you see that we are seeing email and this. This is the method they created in their own class to be able to show which user belong to, like which user this is. All right, you can see the email and the username. All right, so in this case, I can say def str self. So in here, I'm going to say return self dot, let's say title, for instance. It's not more than that. All right, so self dot title. Why did I put this? I think that should be it. So self.title. Now, this is not the end. So once you are able to do this, I want to copy this. You are going to go into the admin just because we want this to be displayed here also. We want our blog to be displayed there too. So we're going to say, you need to say from dot models, because the model is still in the same directory, import blog, just like that. All right, so we've imported the blog. So now what we are going to do is say admin.site.register. So register what? Register blog. All right, so we've registered the blog. Now, the next thing we want to do, I want to cut out this one because everything is already working. The next thing I want to do is now to uh, make migration, which Django has already done for user authentication. That's why we just run migrate the other time. So in this case, I'm going to say Python manage.py make migrations with hairs. So if I press enter now, that created the blog model migration. And if you look at it in our migration folder, you see that we have a couple of things here, which is the blog that we did. You can see that we didn't write any code for ID, and yet it created it. It knows that this is model big auto filled, auto created through primary through blah blah blah. So all of these things you don't need to worry about it. It's going to just auto generate. So this particular title that we specified is there, and the description as well. So that's going to be like the ecosystem, the way the things run here in Django. So the next thing you want to say is Python manage.py, then you can say migrate. So that is actually going to create the table. So it's going to apply the migration to the table. Now that we have done that, if we go back into our dashboard right here and you refresh, you will see now that we have blog. So, and you can already create a new blog. You can say how to code. You can say, welcome to my first Django tutorial, something like that. And then you click, and here we have how to code. So, and the reason we are getting this how to code, from our blog is because we specified in the model here that this method should only output the title. If we put description, for example, let me say description, just like this, and save. Of course, I'm using autosave from here. So that's why I'm not pressing Ctrl S all the time. And you go back to this place, you're going to see now that it's saying, welcome to my first Django tutorial instead of the title, because I changed what I want to output. So in this case, I can also bring it back to title, just like that. And of course, we have successfully created our first model. We've been able to set up our project, set up our first project. So here now, we've been able to create our first project. We've been able to set up a few configuration. We've been able to do a couple of things and all of that. Now, to step it up further, now one of the cool things Django offers is a way to actually output your application as API. So, and that is part of why we installed REST framework here. You can see that we put it here, REST framework, just like this. All right, so the next thing we want to do here on our path to creating a functional API is to create a new folder. We're going to call it serializers. You can call it serializers or serializer, whatever. So serializer.py, of course, because this is a Python framework. All right. So that being said, the first thing I want to do here is to import the serializer class itself. So I'm going to say from rest_framework, import serializers. All right, so that's that about what I need to import. All right, so then I also need to import the model. that we created previously. Oh, I think I created in the wrong place. Okay, so I need to move it. That's supposed to be in our that's supposed to be in our application, not in the project, right? So take note. So that's supposed to be in our app, not in our project. All right, so from here, I want to import my model. Of course, I know the model is still in this same root directory. So I'm going to say from dot models, import, what's the name of the model? Blog. All right. Now, what is serializer? What is doing? So serializer is a way to open your uh, Django API as a JSON file, right? So because front-end engineers are going to be interacting with your API like a JSON, all right? So JSON is a type of JavaScript kind of way of understanding code. So for you to be able to make that happen, you need to create a serializer, and this is applicable to all the frameworks I know of. Almost all of them are doing serializing, when they are creating API, because they want to make it processable by other, interfaces. All right, so now to get started, we need to create a class, and we're going to call that one blog serializer. So by convention, most people would like to call it this way, because so that you know that this is actually a serializer. So just the way we wrote models.model, all right. So here too you can say serializers dot model serializer. So now there's no one way to creating a serializer, but this is one of the easiest way because the code is shorter and all of that. If I'm going to take you through, the one without the model, that is just serializer now, it's going to be a lot longer. So just to cut the long story short, let's focus on this. So you need to create a subclass here, and that one is going to be called meta. So this is something you will always do. So don't even worry about just knowing that it works. So in this meta class, you need to also specify what model this serializer is going to be using. So I'm going to say model equals to blog. All right. So and after that, I'm going to also specify the fields. So I'm going to set equals to. So now there are a couple of ways to go around this, but because of course I want all the fields, I can simply say underscore all underscore, just like this. It's going to take all the field. Another way I can do that is, if I don't want to do that, I can make it, I think it's a list. So I can say, what's the first one? Title. Okay, I think I need to put ID first. Then I can say title. I can also say, sorry, description, just like that, description. So you can see we only have two things here, model, title, and a lot of things have been done for you under the hood in Django. So if you take a look at this, our code is not breaking. There's no problem going on, even though we are calling something else and all of that. All right. So in our view, however, I might just prefer to create a new file called maybe API view, API view, something like this. It really doesn't matter if you call it whatever you like. Of course, it has to have extension .py. That's just the mistake I just made now. So in this one, this is where what is going to determine what actually got displayed, all of those kind of things. And all of the things I've been doing all the while, if you check the official Django documentation, Django, it's not okay, let's say Django Rest Framework, Django Rest Framework documentation. Okay, you see that they have a couple of things here, and view is one of those things that you want to see how they are doing the views. Okay, so Django REST Framework, this is actually their documentation. If you check in the tutorial, you can see view class-based view. So class-based view is what we're going to be using here, and there's a whole lot to learn. All right, so now this is their class-based view, and there are a couple of ways I can go around, creating my views. All right, so I'm going to just go straight up to it, and then we're going to try to create something. So if you look at this documentation, they have a lot they are importing, from snippets, models, import this, serializer, you need to import your serializer, maybe HTTP 404, response, status, right. So all of that, and then list all snippets, create a new, all of those things are here. All right, so how do I get started? Very simple and straightforward. So the first thing I need to do is to import few things. So first of all, I'm going to from models import my blog, right? So then from serializer import blog serializer, just like that. All right. So now, what else am I importing? I can import the HTTP from Django.http. I can import HTTP 404 just so if we have a 404 error and so many other things like that. So for the most part, let me just copy all of these guys and bring them in here, just like this. All right. So the next thing I want to do is to create the actual view. So I'm going to say class blog or class create blog, just like this. So I can say API view. So inside the API view, I'm now going to create a method, def, post, and I can pass request here. So because if you look at the doc here, I think I mistakenly opened an app. Okay, so if you look at this, you see we have get here, and it has self request, all of this stuff, and then it's getting all of them. Serializer, to return the serializer data. So we have the posts, which is to create a new one. All right. So basically, this is the kind of thing we need. So we need the self request, and then all of this kind of setup. All right, so let's see how we can set that up for our own case. So if you take a look at this, we need to put ourselves and then request and then maybe format, set to none, something like that. Of course, none has to be capitalized. And this is a method, so you need to put your full quotes here. Serializer, sorry, serializer class will be blog serializer, just like this. So in here, data set to request data. So that means if you are using data later, it's going to have request.data inside of it. So, and you could actually have access to this data even in your log here, in your console. But anyway, let's just continue with this. So the next thing, I'm just trying to kind of, simplify this as much as possible, just so you kind of understand if you are just starting out. All right. So the next thing is I'm going to check if serializer is valid. I can even put in here raise exception and set it to true. Then serializer.save and return all of this. Okay, so for me to be able to do that quick, let me just go ahead. So let's say if serializer, okay, Okay, so this is adding a lot of code for me. Serializer dot is valid. So this was supposed to be just serializer, not serializer class. So that way, I'm able to use serializer is valid here. So now I can say serializer.save, and save is a function to be able to actually save it in the database. So if that did happen, we need to see the data. So by seeing the data, we need to return a response. So and that's going to be serializer.data, and then we put the status code there. So now we can say return response. Of course, because we have imported the response up here, so we can use it. Response serializer.data status equals to status dot http. So http 201 created is what we need for this purpose. So that being said, the next thing is we want to also, in case, in the else, we want to get the error and then maybe 400 bad requests. So, and that's going to be in the if level. So return, just in case, this actually turn out to be error, return response serializer dot error, dot errors. So status equals to status dot http. So the one I want is 404, so I'm going to scroll down. It's not 404, 400, so which is bad request. I can also, make this uh, a custom validation, but then sometimes it's good for you to actually see what error there, so that when you see it, you can also factor in how you want to create, the error message and all. So now, apart from this that we have done, we can also create uh, classes for maybe for example, API, sorry, API view here, dev get, and in the get here, I'm going to put myself request, then format equals to none. That's that about that. And in this, I'm going to say maybe query or query set. So the name of the model is blog dot object with s dot all. So this is not the only method. We have dot get, and a couple of others. We have dot filter and all of that. Yeah. So, but yeah, this is what we are doing. We want to get all the blogs, right? Serializer. What is this doing? Serializer equals to blog serializer, and so let me look at that. Is it in the class level or in the method level? So it's actually in the method level. So if you take a look at it, of course, Python is a very serious language when it comes to indentation. So if you go out of the scope of the indentation, say for example here, this is going to throw error as well. So basically, make sure your indentation is within the scope of your method. Now, this is going to throw error because I'm supposed to actually use this here. So query set here, uh, not the blog, because we're already putting the query inside the query set here. So pretty much that will list all the. So now let's limit it to this, because in the coming tutorial, I'm going to be expanding the knowledge and we're going to do more, right? So now, how do we go ahead and test this? We need to also link this to a file called urls.py. So url.py is more or less like, the way you will be able to output your content. So now, in the app level, we already have a URL, something like this. So I'm going to just copy this and modify it to fit the purpose of our own this thing here now. So I don't need admin here, but I need path, right? So now the first one here from dot import view API view. All right, so that makes all of the classes that I've created here available in the URLs as well. All right, so that's that about that. So if that being said, I can now start working with how I'm going to connect the app. So I can say something like copy this guy and put it here, and it works seamlessly. So basically what we've been able to do here now is to connect the API view with our URLs. And of course, this one is just going to be blog/blog. So I can duplicate this and now slash blog, let's say list, or maybe I think list, blog list, something like this. So in this case, this is going to be, if you look at the API view, you see we have blog list here. So in my URL, I'm going to also make sure that that is what we are specifying. So this two part is done now. Now, how do we connect it to the project? So in the project here, I'm going to say something like, apart from path, I'm going to also put include here. So in the include, I'm going to specify a new path. So I can say slash, sorry. So this is going to be blog. So I think in my URLs here, I don't actually need to specify. I can say this should be the base. So and this one will now be slash blog list. All right. So in this place now, so basically what I need to do here is to include our app. So and if you have more than one, you can also specify there. So in this case, the only app we have here is the blog. So I'm going to say blog.urls. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm connecting the blog's URL to the project level URL. So that's basically what I'm doing there. So I think there's something wrong somewhere. Oh, so I needed to put a comma here. So that's the problem we have. So now that we've been able to do this, we can also go ahead and check the application. And of course, this is not a JavaScript framework that does auto reloading. So every now and then you need to manually reload the application to see the working state. Okay, so I need to log out of here because that's not where I really want to. Log out, please. Okay, so I don't want to be in the admin. I want to actually be in the front end part of the whole thing. So you can see I have blog and this. So if I do slash blog, we should have something already. Blog. So you can see here now that we actually have our API created, and So you can see now that this actually got created. You can see this is ID2, title rise, description rise above the tide. So if I'm to create a new one now, I can do the same thing by so, and of course, if I go back to the admin by copying this URL and then go back to the admin, we should see the newly created ones. So you can see rise is also there, rise above the tide, and you remember we created that from here, right? So basically what I did here, let me just decide to make a mistake on purpose. And basically I just copied this one and then I change the content like this. A comma, say how to sing, for instance, and take this out. Singing is an art. You need to learn it. Something like that. All right, so if I post now, you can see, it says 201 created. And if I come back and refresh here and check my blog, you see that we have that too, how to sing. And if you open it, singing is an art, you need to learn it. So basically, this is how you will exactly need to learn to create API. All right. Of course, one last thing I didn't add is to actually specify, you know, which URLs will be permitted or not because we are using call headers. So all I need to do is go to the documentation actually. So in here, let's start. Okay, so I think I'm seeing the correct one now. So in this place, Django cost header. So most of this documentation are really clear on what to do exactly. So, but if you are new, you might be a lot confused and be wondering what were you supposed to do. So here now, if you take a look at call allow origin, I can just copy these guys. And what else do I need to do? Nothing else. All right, so I can go back into my, settings.py file, maybe somewhere around here. You can put it anywhere actually. So you can put it somewhere here. So let's say I'm allowing 3000, localhost 3000, because that's what React use in general. If I know any other, this thing, I can decide to also put up maybe my app.virtaul.app, because in most cases, if it is hosted on Virtaul, this is what it's going to look like. If it's hosted on Netlify, I can say my app.netlify.app, something like that. We'll be able to make an API call to our API, basically. So now, if you've enjoyed today's tutorial, please subscribe to this channel the first time, and also please like this video and also give a thumbs up, like the video and share it so that more people just like you can learn from these tutorials that I'm making, and and so that YouTube algorithm can suggest my video to more viewers just like you. So that will be it for today's tutorial. If there's a specific topic you would like me to talk more about, I'll be glad to do that. And also just go into the comment section and put up whatever you would like to see me do. So please subscribe to this channel. That's the basic thing. Please subscribe to this channel, like this video so that more people like you can see the kind of content I'm making. All right, thank you and God bless you. Until next time, see you then.